All right, what's up, guys? Welcome back to the 3 of 7 Project YouTube channel. Me and Chili are back at you to do a awesome video on race day nutrition, or how to fuel on race day, whether you're running an ultramarathon or a marathon, any kind of distance race, anything over, I'm going to say about 90 minutes. You usually need to have some sort of fuel with you so that you can get some calories in your body and replenish the calories that you're expending. When I go out and run, if it's anything less than 90 minutes, I'm usually not bringing any sort of nutrition.
No, just water usually.
Yeah.
Anything over that, anything under that, it's pretty unnecessary.
Yeah. And now, why is this important to you guys? One, so you can run further, but two, because if you don't have this figured out, if you don't have this portion of your running figured out on race day, and you encounter stomach problems, stomach distress, which happens fairly regularly in ultra marathons, I don't care how tough you think you are. If your stomach blows up, your race is over, at least until your stomach calms back down. And hopefully you have enough time to let your stomach calm back down and you're not behind the cutoff, right? So this is extremely, extremely important, is figuring this stuff out before race day. Now, calories per hour, before we dig into the products, for me, it really depends on the pace. It depends on the weather. It's different for everyone. I'd say me, calories per hour, I'm usually looking at somewhere anywhere between 300 and 500 calories per hour is what I'm trying to take in on a long race. Is it less or more, you think, for you?
I mean, the general advice is about at least 300 an hour, and most people have a hard time hitting that. Me personally, the only thing that would make me have a hard time hitting that is I'm running so fast, get caught up in it, and forget to eat, which that has happened to me before. A lot of people have a hard time reaching that much because that gets to be a lot of food 20 hours in, keeping up with calories. But if you can hit about 300, I think you're doing pretty good, because you're always going to be burning more than you're putting in. It's almost impossible not to. But you have to put in as close to that number as you can to avoid crashing.
Yep. So there's a good standard to try to hit, I think, 300, but you got to play with it yourself, right? So let's dig into some of the products that are out there on the market today that help us get that 300 calories per hour in. I'm going to hit some of the products here. Then I'm going to turn it over to Chili. He's going to talk about some of the real food options that he uses during his races. And then we're going to go over some of the supplemental things like salt and a couple little tabs that you can use to replenish electrolytes and things like that. Let me preface this with saying that we're not sponsored by any of these companies, right? So this is a true and honest review. I actually paid for, we paid for pretty much all of this stuff here. Some companies have sent me nutrition products before, but there's no strings attached to it. So this is our honest review. First thing I'll go over is a couple of different drink mixes that we have right here. Now, these drink mixes are actually made to help replenish not just your electrolytes, something like Gatorade or the Noon stuff. These drink mixes actually are made to replenish your calories, right? A lot of these drink mixes, they will advertise that you can use this as your sole source of fuel on race day for a race in excess of 100 miles. I have found that, for me personally, to be untrue. I've never been able to use any of these, although this Tailwinds, for instance, has 100 calories per serving. I can put 3 servings of this in a bottle of water and get my 300 calories per hour, but it's just something about this is not sufficient for me as my sole source of fuel during a race. This is the first one, probably the most popular product that's out there. It's called Tailwind, all right? Comes in a bunch of different flavors. In my opinion, this is a great product when used properly. I actually like Tailwind a lot. I've used it extensively. Now, one of the times I've used this wrong is if you mix it too strong, so you put too much in your water, or for me, if I use this as if I have 2 bottles, right? I'll run 1 bottle with pure water, and I'll run 1 bottle with Tailwind. Okay, so I'm going back and forth between the two. I have ran races before where I drank Tailwind like in both bottles, like that's all I was drinking was Tailwind mix, and that doesn't work out for me. It actually has caused some stomach distress. But if you don't mix this stuff too strong, if you cycle it back and forth between water and a properly mixed bottle of Tailwinds, it has yielded really good results. And it's for me, it's one of my go-to drink mixes that I'm going to use out on an ultra marathon. Again, they advertise it as a standalone. I think that's bullcrap. For me personally, it's not a standalone source of nutrition. But this is a great option for you to at least experiment with, for you to start with in your drink mix. And I think it does a couple different things. Not only gives you calories, but I think it's also got some vitamins and stuff in it, and it's also got some electrolytes in it, so it's kind of a full spectrum thing. This bag of Tailwind right here, this is mandarin orange, is probably my favorite flavor of Tailwinds. That's another great thing about the drink mixes is if you're running a 100+ mile race, sometimes it's nice to have something with a little flavor in it. It's just kind of like a treat. So that's another thing this will do for you. This was $34.99. There's the price tag right on the back of it. I bought it yesterday for this video. So this is something I'll use on race day, not something I really train with a lot. I've raced enough and trained enough with it to know that it works for me. So kind of the testing phase, I'm out of the testing phase with this particular product. The next thing we have right here is made by Hammer Nutrition. This particular drink mix is called Perpetuum Ultra Endurance Fuel. Again, this has 260 calories per serving versus the Tailwind at 100 calories per serving. This stuff right here I have used extensively. The difference between this and Tailwinds is this actually has some protein in it, all right? So this per serving not only has 260 calories, but it has 7 grams of protein. This for me is a great slow burning fuel. If you're doing a race that's not going to require you to run super fast, something like the Mid-State Mile, for instance, that's more of a fast packing pace or just a nice shuffling pace where you're not running, whatever, super fast miles for you, this Perpetuum works great. You start running super fast, for me personally, with this product, it's a little too heavy. It's a little bit too much protein and calories, and for me, if I'm trying to run fast, it just will cause some stomach distress after a while. So this Hammer Nutrition Perpetuum is great, fast packing, backpacking, or even a slower pace, longer race like some of maybe the 200 milers that you might be interested in running. This would be a great option to look at, to train with, to test as a primary, not a primary fueling source, but a additional fueling source that goes along with your real foods that you're hopefully eating and experimenting with. The last one I have right here, this is Intraformance by First Form Nutrition. First Form is a powerhouse in the supplement world, all right? I know these guys personally. Andy Frisella, I've been on his podcast. I know his brother Sal. One thing I love about First Form is I love the fact that they are good people. They're not a bunch of freaking hippies, right? They stand for the same things that I stand for the most part. I'm not saying that we see eye to eye on everything, but I know that they're great Americans, okay? So I love their products. This Intraformance is their endurance supplement that they put out. I am currently experimenting with this product. I have not raced with this. I just got this stuff in just about a month ago. So I've been training with it, but I haven't really raced with it in a long type of event. This has got, just like the Tailwinds, 100 calories per serving, but it also has a lot of ingredients that Tailwinds doesn't have. It's got a BCAA complex. It's got a EAA complex. So it's got some additional components and ingredients that the Tailwind doesn't have that I think could potentially help your performance, all right, in a long-term race. So I'm really looking forward, if I could choose again, after I really dig into this Intraformance, if it does work for me personally, this is probably the product I'm going to go with. And the reason I'm probably going to go with this product is because I believe in the company that produces this product. So even if these two products function properly and exactly the same and they both work for me, I'm going to go with this one because I believe you vote with your money. And I love First Form. So, but that's where I'm at. These are this is my primary kind of fast running supplement, my nutrition. This is a slower run, a slow burn. It's got some protein, the Hammer Perpetuum. The First Form, I'm still in the testing phase on this. So these are the 3 drink mixes that I have experimented with. Let's talk about gels and then we'll move on to real food.
Yeah, everything in running is extremely individual, right? It's based on you. Everybody's different. And you just can't get away from that when talking about stuff. So all we can give you is what has worked for us. And I'm not a big fan of gels. I don't love to do that, to rely on that. But that's not to say that I won't have a gel in a race. I think for a shorter race, like a 50K or a marathon, it's a good idea. You could also consider for a 50K or a marathon or something that you're going to do in 6 or less hours on just going all liquid. I would believe that would be short enough to maybe you have stomach problems, you would go all liquid. And you know, sometimes the real food does cause stomach distress, so gels are another good option for that, because it does feel like you're eating something, but it's not typically heavy on your stomach. I've got 3 examples here of what would be in a gel. Huma is a product that I have used. It's chia energy, which that means most of the calories in this, 100 calories for this gel, are coming from fat, which that's more of a slow burn, like he was talking about earlier. You know, when you're going fast, you want a lot of stuff, just straight sugar, carbs, because that's quick burning energy that you can use to run fast. And it's still a long time, right? 5-6 hours, but not in the 24 or plus range. So another one is Spring. It's 100 calories. That's pretty much the standard for a gel of this size, is to be 100 calories. If it's got a lot more than that, it's definitely got a lot of fat in it, which would mean it's a serious slow burn product. This one's good. I really like this flavor. I like stuff that I like my gels to approximate real food as close as possible. And I think Spring does that pretty much better than any other one that I've tried. A lot of people can't stand the flavor of some of these. It's personal preference. And another thing, this is not a gel, but it's just a little mini pack of honey, which I like to keep things simple, and I think this works about as good as anything. It's pure glucose, right? And it's if you can handle the flavor of it, because it's strong if you're doing a lot of these, I think it's great. It's pure glucose for your muscles, and you know, getting to the point of protein and fat and carbs, that's your macronutrients, right? Protein, honestly, during the race, to me, doesn't do a whole lot of good. It's actually hard to digest protein, so when you're taking a lot of that in, it can be detrimental, and actually burn more calories than as you're burning calories already from running. So your primary macronutrient that you should be getting in is glucose, and it's hard to beat honey for that.
And I've got the Goo Gel, the standard old Goo Gel. Now, the way that I treat a gel in a race is that if I'm racing, even if I'm trying to eat primarily real food and I'm supplementing with my drink mix, I'm always going to have 1 or 2 of these Goo Gels on me. Now, the reason that I've chosen Goo versus Huma or Spring or Muir or the dozen other companies that produce gels is because I can go to a Dick's Sporting Good or sometime probably even a Walmart or my local running shop, and you can find a Goo Gel pretty much anywhere. Some of these other gels, they're smaller companies, right? And you may have to special order them. You may have to be at a specialty running shop to find them. So for me, this is what's convenient to buy. So this is what I'll have on me. Now, I will use this gel as an emergency fuel source, all right? So if I'm somewhere between aid stations, or say I'm out on a loop at a last man standing race and I hit a really low spot, all right, for whatever reason, maybe I missed eating in the aid station. Maybe I didn't eat enough, and they call it bonking in running. If you hit a really low spot, this is emergency fuel for me that's going to pick me up out of that low spot that I'm experiencing at whatever point in my race. So this to me is like the nitrous, like nitrous oxide in a race car. That's what a gel does for me. It picks me up out of a low spot. I'm never going to look at this gel as my primary source of fuel for the duration of the race, because when you eat this much dang sugar, the first one will taste good. About the 15th one, it's going to just be absolutely terrible. All right? So that's gels. I use Goo. There's a lot out there. I think there's a lot out there with much better ingredients than are in this Goo, but this is the most convenient one to buy. Another thing, I'm a caffeine dude, man. I drink coffee by the 40-ounce jug, and this is another way for me when I'm out racing to get a little caffeine in, which is another thing that'll help you pick you up out of that bonk or that low spot that you might experience. So that's my take on gels, man.
Well, a quick side note about that, I think that is the appropriate use of a gel as an emergency. However, a lot of times, if you're in such a bad spot, 100 calories of a gel is not going to lift you out of it. So maintain your plan. That's the key. Stick to your plan as much as you can, because you cannot get behind on nutrition, because that's one way to try to get back if you're not too far in the hole.
Yep.
But if you're too far in the hole, you're not getting out. So the lesson in that is stay on top of nutrition. Stay on top of calories. So other than gels and hydration like this, what are you eating during a race? Like I said earlier, if it's 6 hours or less or in that range, I will go purely liquid or mainly just liquid and gels. If it's anything longer than that, you have to start eating real food, and maybe you even need to in a 6 hour range. Personal preference, but if it's longer than that, you absolutely have to. And real food is the most nourishing thing you can eat, right? Like fruit. I eat 15 to 20 bananas in a 100-mile race at least. And some fruit doesn't work for me. I like bananas because they seem to settle my stomach, and they have a lot of the glucose and fructose that I'm looking for as a fuel source. Another thing that I do that would be considered real food is I drink only water, and the only other thing that I will drink is apple juice that I have put an electrolyte salt in. And what that does is that approximates something like a Tailwind. It's a lot cheaper, and it actually works better for my stomach. I believe that may be out of the norm, that apple juice works better for my stomach, but it just does. I can do Tailwind, it doesn't bother it, but apple juice really, I like the flavor of it. It tastes good, and it doesn't get old. And if it does get old towards the end, I always have pure water to drink, because you can never be without pure water. And
it's a heck of a lot cheaper. I like that point too.
Yeah, it's a lot cheaper. Apple juice and salt, if you can handle it, I think is a great option to circumvent paying $35 for a bag of Tailwind if you can't afford that. So hydration is just as much of a part of ultra running as eating, right? They're both. It's probably more important to stay hydrated than to even stay on top of calories, because if you get dehydrated, your race will be over pretty much immediately. And that's why I do what I do. I always have water on me. I usually carry 2 bottles and have a pack on with a 1.5 liters filled with nothing but pure water, and then the bottles will be the apple juice and salt. Because the 2 main components of what you're trying to do while fueling during a race is to not run out of sugar, not run out of carbs, right? Your muscles cannot run out of carbs. If they do, they will stop working. And electrolytes, it's the same thing. So the main things that you need are carbs and then the electrolytes, which would be sodium, potassium, calcium, and magnesium. Everything else, you will start pulling from your own fat reserves at some point in the race. It inevitably will happen. But protein, like I said earlier, is not hugely vital. That would be vital in the recovery process to get protein in. During the race, it's not supremely important. But back to the real food, I typically go with bananas. I think that could work for anybody. But I'm also a guy who has kind of an iron stomach. I can eat anything. In an emergency, I may take a gel, or I may get to an aid station and grab an oatmeal cream pie or an Oreo or something like that. It's just, if you have to get in calories, if you're getting behind, do something. Eat something. Put something in. You will never win by saying, oh, my stomach's upset and I'm just going to try to tough it out without eating anything. Your body will literally stop working. So always stay on top of that. And real food is a way to put in a lot of calories. What saved me from getting out even earlier at the Mid-State Mile was I was lucky enough to have a crew, and they brought me a Five Guys cheeseburger. That has a lot of protein, right? But it was just something salty and something that I wanted to eat. My stomach was able to handle it. Don't be afraid to do that if times call for it and your stomach is able to handle that. So this is all experimenting. You have to get out and see what works for you. Because if you know that something won't work for you, then don't try it in a race. But that's the advantage of real food. It's a quick way to get calories in. It's a break from all the sugar and that you can get really sick of. And it's actually nourishing your body more than the drink mixes or the gels are. So,
how do you actually use the salt tabs or the salt?
There's two different products here. This is called base salt. It's literally just salt in a tube. So what would happen is I would have this in my pack. I would unzip it. I would get this out, pop open the lid, lick my finger, dump it over onto my finger, close the lid, and lick my finger, and that would be a serving of the salt.
Okay.
And these, in this bottle, this is a salt stick product. It's a buffered electrolyte salt tab, and it's literally a pill, essentially, that you would just take.
How often?
I typically don't use these during the race. I use the salt during the race. It's hard for me to swallow pills while I'm running. Mm-hmm. So how often that you would get a hit of base salt would be, it really depends on how much you're sweating. In the summer, you may need to lick it as much as 2 or 3 times an hour, but in the winter that may be excessive. It's hard to get too much salt in, but that can happen. So you need to always be hydrating and drinking, especially too. But I use these primarily before the race. Some of these even have caffeine in them, and we'll pop 1 or 2 of these before the race to make sure I'm topped off ahead of the race. So that's how I use electrolytes.
All right, yeah, and I don't use those products, and maybe it's because I do supplement with the stuff like the Tailwinds and the drink mix. So I look at this, and this has the things that you talked about, Chili: the calcium, the iron, the potassium, the magnesium, sodium, 310 milligrams in this. So
one thing about the products to be wary of if you're relying on a Tailwind or whatever product you may be using as a source of electrolytes is check how much is in them. Okay, because sometimes they'll have it listed as an ingredient, but there'll barely be any in it. So that's not doing you much good. So always check the levels of what is in it. Check the calories. Check the grams of sugar and carbohydrates that is in your products to make sure that you're not getting ripped off by something that just has a tiny amount of it so they can list it, but not that's going to do you any good.
Yep. All right, well, I love that, man. And for me, real food is always, just like Chili said, real food is going to be my primary fuel source for every single race. And what does that look like for me? I'm a lot like Chili. I have a pretty tough stomach. Anything from a Cliff Bar to avocado toast with some Old Bay seasoning on it. That's what I ate at the Mid-State Mile. To some dish, noodle dish or something that they may have on an aid station, to fruit. I mean, I love oranges. I love bananas, right? So those are all things that I'm going to be seeking. Now, I like to use the aid stations. I figured when I pay to go and run a race, I'm paying so that I can eat off these aid stations during this race, right? Or else I could just go run the course by myself for free. All this is done on public land for the most part. So I like to snack off the aid station, find real food there, and utilize it. It's what you paid for, man. Now, moving into recovery, really there's a few recovery products out there. I've actually used this. This is a recovery and rebuild by Tailwinds. I've used this during a race, okay? So the way I used this at the Mid-State Mile last year was every 12 hours, there was a 20-minute intermission. All right, so a 20-minute long break every 12 hours out there. And that's when I would go ahead and mix one of these recovery drinks during that 20-minute intermission, and I would just pound this down, all right? And I don't know if it did anything to help me. I just wanted to get some, while I had a little break. This has got a lot of sodium. This has got a lot of those things Chili was talking about. It's got 391 milligrams of potassium, 440 grams of sodium. It's got 10 grams of protein, so 43 grams of carbs. I had a minute there where I could just take a wrap off, be still. That's when I would pound this down, which is going to be a lot heavier than something like this, all right? Day-to-day in recovery, I'm using the First Form protein mix. I put it in my smoothies. I mix it in a mix cup, so I do supplement with protein drinks after a hard workout, a hard run, whatever it may be. My main source of protein is coming from First Form. That's where I get my protein from. Other than that, aside from nutrition, recovery, and this is not about that, but it's obviously sleep, rest, but we're focusing on nutrition here. So recovery rebuild, I think it's a great product. I have used it during a race when I got a minute to take a break, and it really kind of fills you up. Yeah. You know, gives you that extra energy. But that's how I use that.
Yeah, so that would be a unique example of when you would use it during a race, right?
Yeah.
It's intermissions. But that would
be fast race, you don't get the luxury of that.
Right. So after the race, that's when real food becomes even more important than during, because after the race you have to get those micronutrients that you've been missing, those vitamins that you're now depleted in. Your immune system is very compromised after you finish any kind of a marathon. It's compromised for a while. That period of immunocompromisation is extended the longer you go. So if it's a 24-hour, 100-mile race, you're going to be compromised for a long time. Your body will be very depleted. You need to put in a lot of the same things that you were taking in during the race, and also some of what you were missing. So what you were missing is, like we mentioned earlier, some protein. After the race, really hit home protein. I wouldn't say get as much in as you can, but get a lot in, and also keep eating carbs and keep eating real foods that are healthy and have the vitamins and minerals that you now may be deficient in or depleted in for a while after the race.
That Five Guys hamburger is a great recovery meal. I'm going to go ahead and tell you. It is a great recovery meal. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video on nutrition. Again, just to recap, we recapped the Tailwind, the Hammer Perpetuum, which has got some protein in it, the First Form Intraformance. We talked about multiple different types of gels and how to use them. We talked about our salt and mineral products here. And then we also hit a little bit on recovery. So guys, if you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Leave us a comment on this video. Let us know what you thought, man. We do these things. We put these out for free for you guys because we want you to be successful. And we're going to keep doing it if you guys keep engaging and you enjoy what we're putting out. So leave us a comment there. Go check the podcast out, 3 of 7 podcasts. We have multiple of those posted here on this YouTube channel if you're watching. So we appreciate it, man.
Yeah, thanks for watching.
Nuff said.